Yes. Okay. Um, let's spend some time waiting for Xcode to open our project, as per tradition of the stream. And let's open everything else while we are at it. We have one file out of 3.6 thousand, so uh, some of it is done. Okay. Um, well, let's see. So one of the things we have that is not working correctly is due to how we started initially. So one way to define a rectangle um, is to define where it starts, right? And how large it is. And then you can just draw width, height from this point. Another way is to define 2 points and kind of uh, swap the coordinates to find 2 other points. And then you have a rectangle when you connect those four. Um, and you can do middle and size and everything else, like a couple of more things like that. So what we have is 2 points, these red ones, that you can move. And when you move these points, width and height changes. Let's say you move this one to here. So now instead of this rectangle, we get this rectangle. And the way we draw the rectangle is that we define the origin based on top left point. So this one. And then calculate width and height based on this distance and this distance. So we say start here at this x and y and draw a rectangle of this size. This is all fine until you move this bottom point to the left of this first point. And what this sticky says, that in that case, there is not a top left position, there is bottom left and top right. And our rectangle logic doesn't really work anymore. It breaks down. It tries to draw a rectangle from this point um, with negative height, basically. So instead of drawing this height, it draws minus this height, because this point gets erroneously assigned as top left, and then the difference is negative between heights. So one way to fix it is to change the logic of sizes, right? To not only support top left, but also bottom left or bottom or top right, I guess. The other way is to add uh, 4 points that you can drag, right? Uh, so in addition to this two and this, add this two, here, it would be here, and then here. And then you can always have a top left point that is in the correct position. And if you drag this one here, it becomes a new top left. And if you can drag this one here, top left kinda is inferred. That's all sounds okay. I'm sure we would arrive on a good solution eventually. Uh, but then you have things like, hey, but now I actually want to choose a circle and not a rectangle, right? Because in our app, we have this as a goal eventually. And it would be nice if in here, when you're cropping, we would just show you a circle. And that is achievable like this. Uh, and we have a circle, but now the problem is that we have quite a distance from here, from where the circle starts to where the drag is, because circle can only fit into a square, which is the smallest dimension of rectangle, right? So now these points would really be offset from a circle in a really, really weird way. So in addition to this being just a circle, we need to also modify logic a little bit to put constraints onto what the proportions of this area can be, because we always choose a rectangle, we just visualize it differently, right? This is a rectangle semantically, but we will only use a circular portion centered in that rectangle. And for it to look nice, we should constrain width and height to be the same, right? So, and eventually we want to add other constraints, like we do want to select a rectangle, but it should be 3 by 2. So in our base case, you can select any kind of rectangle. You can select any kind of rectangle, please. What is this? Why did we break? Why is this breaking? Let's go to the left. So base case, any rectangle you want, here it is, right? But we might want to do things like you can only select a rectangle of certain width and height proportion. So it sounds like a little bit bigger issue than just drawing circle correctly or making sure these points do not produce negative values. So right now, in our API for this component, you give an image that you want to be resizing as a first argument. Then you give a value of where you want this rectangle, this output to be, right? So whatever you selected gets translated into the area of the actual image, and you get access to that so that can later you can crop it, right? So you crop starting at 450/82, the size of 256/279, and this is what you get. What we want to say is that you should be able to only give us squares, right? So then we constrained dragging this to increase, to only drag this diagonally you can from now on. So it should snap. Um, so it sounds like we don't really want to modify this area, right? What we really want is not to say, oh, show a circle or whatever else we might come up with. What we really want to say is that while you're cropping this image, put the rectangular selection into this variable, but also we need to say that we want to have a rectangle, right? Or we want to have a ratio and then or a square, right? Which is just a rectangle of 1 by 1. Or maybe you want to select a circle and there's just a special case where it's square but it draws a circle. So it seems like what we would like to be doing is having something like a protocol of crop mode, right? Where that's one of the options. Or we have an enum of crop mode, right? So this is two options. And by default, we just say rectangle. And we can also add square, and we can also add circle. Actually, in our app, we just need this too. Well, we actually in our app, we only need a rectangle, right? And sometimes we want to make it 1 to 1, and sometimes we want to make it 5 to 3. And that's basically it. Mm, so actually, very, very base option is to just have a double with a width height ratio, right? And then you can say 5 for width is 5 parts, height is three parts. And then we would be able to cover all the functionality except specifying what the window renders, right? Except saying, you know what, instead of the square, I want a circle. So for rectangle, you wouldn't give any arguments. For a square, you want to give 1 to 1, and then for a circle, you want to give 1 to 1, and they say please render circles. So there are at least, instead of the square, render circles. So there are at least two different parameters that we want, so this variable is out of question. And creating two variables, right, is is good option, except it's possible to give something like this accidentally, right? Which is not a correct UI, which will leave us with a circle that's in the middle and the points are way too far off. So we ideally, instead of saying make sure you don't make this mistake, we would ideally design our code in a way that that mistake is not possible. So what we're left with is combining these two, right? I guess struct is also an option. Um, how would it work? You would have these two variables that are perhaps um, fixed, right? Something like this. Uh, and then instead of passing them directly to the initializer, right? If we just say something like ratio is ratio, shape is shape, which would be maybe coming from here, right? Um, this would allow the same problem, right? You would be able to call this init in the same way as two separate variables and make a mistake like this, right? So instead of this initializer, we would make a private initializer and give some static functions, right? Where you would have a static function like circle, and that would just return you a new struct with a ratio of 1, and this would be circle. And then you would have a square, right? Where this would be a rectangle with ratio of 1. Or you would have a rectangle where you can give any ratio you want. And maybe that can default to something, or yeah, so rectangle wouldn't really work, right? Because rectangle we want to support rectangle that is, for example, 5 by 3, right? But we also want to support rectangle that is anything by anything. So kind of free form what we have now base case option. Like this is no longer possible with this API. However, if we list our options, right? So we want to have a rectangle 1 by 1, aka square. So square, aka rectangle 1 by 1, 1 to 1. We want to support rectangle 5 to 3 for our reviews. And we want to support circle, right? aka square plus circle shape. So nowhere here we need a rectangle that is whatever by whatever, right? Any. That's not really a good way to write it down, but this is technically not a requirement. There is always a ratio that we want. So this could work in terms of functional requirements. I always type n in the end of ratio. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I'm getting hungry and I want a ration. So we return struct here that we have created. I pasted it wrong. Okay. So that is technically possible to achieve without allowing any mistakes by hiding an initializer. And so private prevents errors like mm, if we later wanted to extend this, we would probably add a new static function that can do some kind of validation or anything else we might want. Like if there is more conditions that can be violated, right? Now, this groups data very well. So then in our code for rendering stuff, we would use these two values, right? Here where we render the cutout, we just take that shape. Now what happens is that we have this logic of giving sizes to shapes. So it seems to me that calculating it here is not the best place to do, because one of the reasons this fails, except this compiler errors, is when you give a circle, something about sizes or offsets doesn't work correctly anymore. Like giving height and width to circle is not supported or something like that. So it seems like our function should be returning a shape that's already sized correctly. And it would be nice to have it all in the struct itself or in a protocol. Now, extending this, right? So how we would go about extending it, we would write an extension for crop mode struct that would do this. Let's say we start with circle and square, and now we want a 5x3 rectangle. We would make this, right? And that builds. Let me quickly remove this argument because it's not going to be here for sure. This is not going to work like this. So for now, we just revert it back. Is it building? No, there's some issues still. Yeah, no need to save this. Okay, now it should build. Okay. Okay, so this is still working well. Let me quickly, while I look at this, I see there are some changes that are not committed. Um, this is gone actually. We fixed it very well. So there are no more to do's in terms of dragging, I think. Do we need this minus? Yeah, let's leave this minus. Okay, none of this we need. Okay, drag crop window. Make crop window itself draggable. So just now we can easily fix that, revert our code. Okay, so this is one option, right? Another option is make this square. You can do a square, you can do a circle, and then we would add a bunch of variables like shape would be shape. Where we would return based on self, right? We would return if it's a square, then it's a rectangle. If it's a circle, it's a circle. And maybe this needs to get sized. Like what we want to add here, right, is a constraint. How to constrain proportions. We would want to do it like how we do it right now. We just kind of calculate what it should be. But here, in the instance of this enum, we won't have the data. So there is nothing we can put in width and height. Right? We can put 1, but how does it actually work when we want here rectangle should be 160 by 64? How do we know these numbers from here? And the problem with those numbers is that it depends on the image that is rendered, and not just on the image but how it's rendered, right? So actual image is 910 by 607, and we render it in these boundaries, and it ended up being 329219. So propagating these values would either make this a function that returns any shape based on this rect, or I guess size. Right, and now we can say size width, size height. And I guess same for a circle. Can we give a circle a radius or something? How do we size the circles? Well, actually, it has to be mean size, right? Diameter would be mean between size width and size height. And that would be a diameter, I guess. Something like this is how it would work. The problem now is that we can't really return any shape inside of here, right? This cutout accepts views where S Oh, it returns a view where S is a shape, but not some shape. Can we do something like crop mode struct dot circle, not struct, crop mode enum dot circle, and this would be let me do of it would be a shape sized like this. Like, will this build? Okay, we're running into SwiftUI things where it cannot figure out specific error, so it just says something is wrong. But I'm pretty sure that this doesn't work. Let's make it a rectangle, a square, right? Okay, so member offset cannot be used on a value of type any shape. So this is where we go wrong. That offset is not working here because offset what is the definition of this offset? It's in shape. So it's a function on shape. Interesting. So, but I guess we will have to trust me here. It won't work with type erasure. Or at least I couldn't make it work. But so we can figure size out, right? And the other part of this would be um to calculate where the points are, right? So we'll need to have another var that calculates control points. Or it calculates a rectangle, right? Selected rectangle. So we want two things. We want this shape, that is portion of the image, that previewable portion of the image, and we want this rectangle that contains that shape. So that would be also a function like this, where you would be returning a size. You would be returning a rectangle of this size, I guess. Well, that is always a rectangle, so it's a shape, so containing rectangle is what we want. Um, because we will be drawing this rectangle for the points and then overlaying the image. So this containing rectangle is based actually on points, or where the points are, right? And that's array of points. Well, I guess it's 4 points. How do you write this in Swift? You say points like this? Uh, okay, so you can say assert points count is 4 or something. Um, or rather precondition. Right, and then we would have with points. Well, if we're doing this, why don't we just say P1, P2, P3. Huh, interesting. So this is not really, I think, what we want, because from the view, parent view, we can always know where this rectangle is. Right? We just need to port the logic that moves it, right? Since this top left, bottom right, whatever, what we really want is to probably say for each in S points, right, control points, we just want to render them, right? We just want to render them. Something like this we want. And then we just update point. Um, distance offset. Mm, or it's rather move point to location, something like this. Um, and that would live somewhere here, right? Because what we want to do is we want to move the logic about moves the logic about where control points could be somewhere else. This is interesting. There is not control points yet, right? So then we would have to have a var that defines where control points are. And that var should now operate. These control points are in the context of this boundary, right? So these control points should be also in function like this, because we need to know the sizes Rendered. We need to know this, right? So UI image rect size. So this would be CG rect. Something like this. So control points within this rectangle and that's not the only thing that it depends on, right? Because this is covering initial case. So it's just starts at origin, right? Then at max, let's make a max here quickly. Extension for cgrect, where is it? Okay. And now we also need to do something like this. And we need to say something like retroactive. So we need to make a point hashable. But it needs to be retroactive. What is the next error? Okay. But how do control points move? Well, how they move is the following, right? We just have them. We need to store them, right? And then the only way to store stuff in enum, is it true? Can I just say var x equals 0? Probably not. No. So this enum stuff is just not gonna work because we're fighting at every stage, right? So having these three functions is fine, but now we want to remember where we move which control point to, and that's just not really possible unless we do something like this points, right? And then we need to initialize it, and when we initialize it, is then we need to add switches everywhere. This is just not a good fit. So we left with a struct, and protocol, right? So, okay, we can have a shape, we can have control points, which is a private var, and we can move all of this code, right? So instead of storing this top left, bottom right, whatever, which we never use, except here, we will have those functions in here. Um, and then that will get a little bit tricky because besides just calculating where control points are, which is probably the same for every type, for circle and square and rectangle, we would have to put logic like dragging there. And then dragging would depend on ratio. So when you would try to move this point here, we would need to call into move point, and move point might return you a value. So if we are moving the point here, let's say we want a square, right? What happens when we move it to the left? It should go like this, up to here. So it's just still a square. So kind of diagonally it should behave. With a rectangle, you can move it anywhere. So the code for moving would be different, right? We would be clamping stuff. Uh, and the code for calculating actual distances would be also different. Interesting. So it all has to go here. So if we go back to choosing between structs and protocols, right? Because enums we saw is not correct. The main difference would be extending, right? Creating new shapes. If we write a struct, what this kind of implies that we can make a code um, okay, let me just write something down. So this would be mutating function like this, and there will be mutating function drag crop window to position CG point, right? Or probably some kind of offset, right? So the difference between structs and protocols would be that creating them is not that different, and you can make a new extension to avoid the errors of combining these variables. That's fine. But then all the code should be here, right? How do we differentiate between rectangle and circle here and here, and also here, right? And this any shape is probably also not working. So in here, we don't really need to. So the code would be, right, if let's make it a little bit simpler, right? If ratio is not 1 or something, whatever, then we do it one way. Otherwise, we do it another way. Well, not quite, because whatever ratio we have, we have to maintain it, right? So we have to offset, right? Should be 5/3. Div x is whatever value, right? Some value, some double, whatever. And then div y is div x times ratio. Is it correct? So we have a ratio of width to height, and we have how much this should change. And we have this value that we don't know how much this should change. So what we want to solve is that current width and height is equal to ratio, right? And this plus difference and this plus difference height should also be equal to ratio. So that means that this should be equal to ratio. So we calculate, if we multiply it, so we say d this dh r times r, and then we can divide by r. So we'll say this times r equal dh. Okay. So we can like figure it out how much to move stuff. But what if you move a different direction? We have to base it on actually changing heights or whatever. Um, Interesting. This is not the easiest thing to figure out, or maybe I'm making it very complicated myself. Um, what I notice is happening is that I'm trying to think of everything. When I think of structs, right, I'm trying to think of everything. When I think of the protocols, what I want to say is that you have to have an array of control points, right? You want to have a shape. So you can read this, you can read this. And you can have a function of move control point to location, right? Oh, it should be a function, sorry. You have to have this function, and you have to have this function. And maybe this functions are slightly different later. Maybe they have return values. But once we have done this, right? Can I say mutating? What? So I'm gonna quickly turn this off for a second. And then I draw a I draw these control points. I draw the shape. And I can just have a crop mode protocol. I think something like this will happen, right? So we just always give, this is basically a pure function of control points. So if we use a protocol, this is something of, this is a shape of what we might end up with. If we were writing a game, we would probably just put something like this inside, right, where we have some control points. Or if we have a lot of stuff that we can move or crop, size, whatever, or rect. Mm. And inside of our image crop selector, instead of remembering this size, we will just instantiate a new crop data with a rectangle that starts of this size, that starts at the origin of at 0, 0. And then when we init this, we can call into it, or some functions exist that take crop data, right, and return you a new crop data or something like this. Mm-hmm. Um, so we would make it here, but we would use it from here, right? We would use it from a parent. So in a preview, what we would want them to do is to say that mode is rectangle 5 by 3. I think so. If anything, I'm confident in this. Um, okay, so I'm confident in that API. I feel very good about it. So you can have a free, and you can have a something else, but for now let's implement free, right? So what we want is to say mode is crop mode, and it's free. So then this is not needed. This I'm gonna close for now. I'm gonna rewrite our base case to just something useful. So what we would want is we would want to save we would have to have a private var of type one of this, right? Or actually crop mode protocol. But that's not really possible. How do we create this? Um, so Swift UI uses a lot of this. Okay, so now we can, so extending this would be creating your own thing that conforms and passing it as a mode, so that's fine. And then we would have a cropper here. That would return some crop mode protocol, no, any crop mode protocol, and it would switch on self. And in case of custom, it would just return mode. And in case of free, we would have something like this. So we would have a struct that says free and it's crop mode protocol. This would be a rectangle. So let shape, or I guess var shape would be a rectangle. Would never have any control points for now. Doesn't do anything here. Okay. Um, and then we would have the same, but we don't have S, right? We have cropper now. And then we can cropper move point. This is not a correct definition, right? Why do we need a rectangle? Because it changes, right? So within ah okay, where is our protocol? Okay, this is still a var, but actually it would be a shape. Let's call it cutout. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be shape. And this would be control points within rectangle. Um, so this is called cutout, and this has within rect, CG rect. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay, so here we'll have a rect like this. This is not correct size. So what we need to do is to get rid of all of this code, basically, which is nice, and move it up. But it feels to me like this is a good way to go. And we can have some built-in things, like a square would be different built-in protocol. Okay, let's see if we can make it work later. For now, I'm gonna pause for now. Okay. Uh, hey, Jay-Z God. Perfect timing. I just realized something. I'm a little bit anxious when I stream. It's easier for me to get into the mode where I forget about what I'm doing, or rather, I'm starting to do things not systematically, but really like as a chain of thought. So let's try to take a deep breath and focus on our goal. So I think my goal is, no, I know that my goal is to make an API for this that I would like to use as a library. Like what would I ideally want? Ideally, I want exactly like this. Something exactly like this, where I give an image, I give a binding to where I want that image to, where I want crop selection to be. And then sometimes I want to specify, hey, I want a freeform rectangle, I want some ratio, and I want a square, I want a circle. And then it doesn't really matter what goes inside of here on that level. Now on level lower, how do I want this to work? Um, it seems that what I did is quite good, where I just want to call into a function like this, say what rectangle I want. This is not correct. I want a rectangle that starts at 0, 0 and of size rendered size, I think it's called size rendered. So I render an image. Where is it? I see what its size is ended up being, and when size changes, I don't want to do any of this. Yeah, so this needs to be change this, um, and change this cutout. So I don't want to care really about repositioning. Well, why I care about this is uh, we need to know initial values. So that's something that is something for later. Uh, and I think this is not really good. And this is not really good. Because here I don't want to calculate, or rather I'm not moving to a location of a drag, I'm moving by distance. So I want to know, I want to say maybe offset control point by distance. right now this is tied to SwiftUI a little bit, and we need to keep track of where we started and what the size was then. Um, but that's also for later. It's about dragging. So dragging is fine. This is how do we update positions? Very directly. Actually, wait a second. Actually, we have the same problem. So the problem that we solved last time was that if you drag from a middle, it's all fine. But it used to be that if you drag from a corner, it would move the rectangle and make it center to where your finger is, and we fixed it. But with points, you see? Oh no, you don't see. Yeah, so I start dragging from a corner of this point, but the point ends up in the middle of where I am. So it's kind of similar, a bit of junk. It's not as pronounced, mm, but it's not nice. So we do have a same problem, and it's good because we can reuse the same solution. I'm curious if we can inherit this class, so we can emit events like we want. How are you doing, JZ God? So the problem is, the problem with using it positions directly is this happens, right? There is a jump. You start dragging from a corner, but you end up dragging the middle. So that we know how to fix, and instead of drag position, instead of moving this point to drag position, which will end up, so we have the circle and we moved it here, but we touched circle by the corner and it will actually move here instead of moving here, right? So it will be offset. We can fix it by using a position. That's issue number one. Issue number two is that this movement happens in events. So first you get x1 or point 1, then you get point 2, and then you get point 3. And if you start offsetting by this distance, and then by this distance, and then by this distance, you'll offset way further away. So you want to offset by the distance between the start and point 1, and then between point 2 and point 1, and then between point 2, 3, and point 2. That we also know how to fix. We just remember last drag event. So that should be in a drag gesture code. Let's write it as a to-do. Um, create our own gesture based on drag gesture so that events are not accumulative, but serial. Like I don't know. But incrementive. So the events are incremental instead of total. And then total incremental would be total distance is event 1 plus event 2 plus event 3 instead of total, where total distance is just event 3. Okay. That is one issue that we will address later. And what we're doing now is making all of these calculations go away. How would we go about that is we always give this rectangle and we say something like, this is the current situation, this is where your rectangle is, this is what changed, right? So we kind of need to know what control points are in our freeform selection. Interesting. Hmm. So right now we give this canvas in here. Um, let's say we start with everything set to 0. And then we have resize. So now we say cropper resize canvas. Okay. Cropper maybe like this is enough. And maybe it's just the size now. Okay, so if we call it like this, it's fine for now. What is this error? Okay, so mutating function, but now we are not really conforming to the protocol is the problem. Um, I don't want to make it state. That's strange. Let's make it mutating, I guess. Let's follow what Swift says, right? I guess control points is not mutating. So we have a read thingy and we have reading and we have updating. Okay. We don't need this within rect stuff anymore. Um, this could be a property. Okay. Cannot use mutating member on an immutable value. Uh-huh. Okay. So instead of doing this, we make it a state. And we need it like this, I guess. I don't know if this will work. Last time it didn't. So now control points are not there anymore. So let's see. So this just returns these 4 points, and they all at 0 because we're not doing anything here. So I guess if canvas size equal 0, we should update p1 to 0, p2 to 0, size width, or size width 0. So bottom up, p3 is size width, size height. p4 would be 0 and size height. Should have 4 points on corners, yes. So now we're gonna implement dragging the points. But first we're gonna print this rectangle. Do we never read from it? No. Cutout will be cropper shape. And we cannot use why can't we use any shape? That is curious. Okay, while it builds, let me just test something quickly. Um, so the problem is I don't want to use generics because it will not work. So we draw a rectangle that is filled by this color, and it's framed 100 by 100. And we want to put a little cutout in it. Huh. I offset it here, but actually I want alignment. Basically, what I want is something like this. Um, huh. I don't get it. Oh yeah, no, it is correct. Where's my test view? Do I need to give padding to this tag? Huh, funny. Okay, so everything is black, and I want a rectangle like this. That's a little bit. Oh, yeah, that's correct. Um, and I want to cut stuff out. Okay. Uh, oh, this is very nice. Um, Mm, does this work? Man. Okay. Okay. So this is kind of works. Uh, Now I want to say alignment. Let's create our own function that starts exactly like this. And it takes alignment. Hmm. 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 Why is this not working? Do we have sizes of this? Hmm. Can I get the size? Not really correct. Okay, this is getting nowhere. um, moved. I just want to anchor it. I just want to don't draw it in the middle. Uh, oh, I get it. Wait a second. Middle is direct. And the middle is and it starts at x is rect middle x minus and rect middle y minus min m over 2. So in the middle we get a square that's middle centered. Uh, uh, uh. So this square is correct. But for some reason this circle is not in the middle of that square. Um, well, um, I hope you are positively impressed. So it's a middle square, but we need it in the middle. That's a problem. I don't know why the height is so small. Oh, because it's 200 by 200 and this square is larger. This square is larger than 200. If we don't specify the size, it will be correct. Yes, and if we give an original rectangle, it will also be the same. So that's what we want. Uh, 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 uh. The problem is we cannot know the size of what it's drawing. So we do need an anchor point thing. Uh, okay, let's revert. So apparently this is our only option, center. But that's only iOS 18. shape size anchor point. Shape size anchor point Swift UI. What do people say? This is what I want, this is what I get. Exactly our problem. Alignment guide. That's not in shapes. What do I need to return? I don't get it. CG float. Yeah. Here. Oh, because this returns some view. So we can't really put it here. Perhaps we can put it here. So this needs to be a view something. Poo, 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 poo. So it does call clip shape with alternating fill. What if we do this? No. Oh, because it renders the same way here. Something interesting is happening. Um, okay, so if we just draw a rectangle here, everything will be the same as without cutout. If we draw a circle here, we would get a circle in the middle. So we need to invert this. Broken. Why don't we Google Swift UI invert mask? So basically this what if we add a path So first we add a rectangle we don't know the sizes, right? Um, and then we add a circle. Well, actually that shape. No. We don't have dimensions, that's the issue. Um, why don't we use this as a mask? I'm confused. Um, I a little bit forgot why am I doing this. Because I want to use a view here basically. So this S, I want it to be a view. So what if I do this? No. What if I do this? No. What if I do this? Oh yeah, some shape. I wanted to do some shape, so I wanted to get rid of this. So any shape is what I wanted to say. Uh, and then I started playing with alignment. um, value some view has no member stroke. So stroke returns stroke shape view. And then um let's remove alignment for a second. Can we do this? Think this is how it works? How do you make it possible? T-type, okay. So it calls this one. No. Type of shape cannot convert any shape type to expected any shape type. This is any shape type? What is the difference? Type any view cannot conform to view. Okay, because this is some and this is any. Maybe that's like fundamental misunderstanding. Um, I'm a little bit lost now. It's time to have some food, I guess. Um, annoying. But why can't so what I don't understand is why can't I have any shape here? Um, This is what I wanted, basically. This is what I wanted. Um, oh yeah, of course, rects and stuff. Um, so will this allow me to say proper shape? Did they remove shape from a protocol? Cutout it's called. Oh, this was like a tangent. um, cutout. Okay. Oh man, that was an adventure. Okay. So if I now change this to circle, where is it? Do we get a circle? Please get a circle. So, okay, so what would be a benefit of having a generic over any shape, right? So before what we had, is this more optimized or what is it? Um, hey, Talks, you just missed a very fun hour where we went on a huge adventure. Um, so the difference between using this, right, versus using something. So you have a func with an argument of any shape, or you can have a func of this, right, like this. I don't know. Why would you choose one or other? So Swift, generic versus any. What do people who understand it better than me say? Well, that's a common question apparently. I read Swift documentation in Apple side. There's this function which swaps two values. Now I want to do this, to call this. Well, here, yeah, no, that should work. Generics are strongly typed at compile time. You may compare. Oh, of course. I I'm very JavaScript intuition heavy. Everything is a runtime. So this will all happen runtime wise. And the other one would, so this would compile an actual function that takes like rectangle if you use it with rectangles. And this would just be one function that is dynamic dispatch or in runtime or whatever. Swift generic constraint versus any protocol. Yes, exactly, exactly. And why would I say any shape instead of this? Use of protocol shape as a type. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Um, Classic Apple. In your second function is protocol. No. Where is this? Which one is the second function? Yes, second function is app protocol. Is this a very old question? 7 years ago. Okay. You are actually passing a container that has blah blah a box and 16 for types. If the past value is now bigger, the object will be allocated on the heap. Blah blah blah. So it's just slower. Yeah, so that is the difference. So now we're JavaScript now basically. So if this were generic like this, it would have to propagate everywhere. So we could also say something like, doesn't really make sense to generic this. Okay, anyway, I'll take a short break and go cook a little bit. Because I think I've been thinking too hard. Uh, let's leave it to do here. This is only valid for initial render that lets us know the size. However, things might be resized later, so we need to adjust scale points accordingly. Um, because when we start, we don't really know where anything is. And then once once the image was rendered and we know its size, we're going to call the function to let us know. And once we know, we can do this. But actually, we should probably do it anyway. Uh, like every time, imagine the parent container changes the size, then the image will get a bit smaller, right? Kind of what happens in the app, right, with this cropped image. Well, it does actually stay the same. What if I make it very narrow? Oh yeah, that's because we do size to fit, but it could be. Oh my god. Oh, can I please do something? Why can I? Um, it could be that width of this cropped is fixed, right? And then the image will be just rendered in the middle. Well, width is fixed, but height isn't fixed. So it always takes the full. And if we say it should be at most certain height, when we make it larger, it would be center aligned with some empty space around it, and then this size would change. So we need to scale the crop to kind of stay in the same place. Maybe we can do something like um so something like this. Guard size is not 0, else return and say p1 is p2 is p3 is p4 is 0. That's probably not gonna build because Swift p1 p2 p3 p4 equals 0. And this should actually be if size width equal 0 or size height equal 0. And uh, okay, then if our current size is 0, we do the scaling like this. Otherwise, we uh oh my god, please have to please learn to edit text code. So instead of 0, so this is initial resize. This is guarding for division 0 something. Um, we want to scale p1 to ratio p2 to ratio p3 to ratio and p4 to ratio. And ratio is, what is the ratio? Um, is new size width divided by size, or actually canvas width divided by size width is canvas height divided by size height, and then we make a new point p1x times ratio x, p1y times ratio y. So if this was 100 and this is 50, if it was 100 by 100 and now it's 50 by 50, we should get 0.5 here. But we will actually get 2, right? Because 100 by 50 Um, um, so we multiply here, and same for point 2, then same for point 3, and same for point 4. I guess that works. So we can move points now, I guess. Oh, we only did this. Hmm. Okay, let's try to do this too later. I'll stop for now. Thank you for joining Jay-Z Garden Talks. I'll be back in an hour or something. Okay, bye.